so good to be here. um, I always enjoy speaking so much. I'm grateful to always have the opportunity. But hey, so we've been in this series called Hitler, the Big Bang, and the Bible, and that's kind of a title that'll hit you in the face a little bit, and it kind of pops out. And it's for a reason. It's because we're talking about some really big topics. We're talking about some huge questions that people have against our faith, and it also teaches us how to defend our faith. And so the series is all about apologetics. And a couple weeks ago, Pastor Kyle had an amazing message all about why does God allow evil and suffering in the world. And last week, Pastor Woody, he had a great message as well, all about can we trust the Bible? Is it trustworthy? And it was amazing things. It's all stepping stools, but and so we're super excited to be in this series. And so I just want to let you guys know today, we're talking about faith and science, and it's the question of can faith and science coexist? Are they compatible? Are they incompatible? And these are questions that a lot of people wrestle with. Whether you're a Christian, whether you're an atheist or scientist or another religion, whatever it is, a lot of people wrestle with this question. And I just kind of want to set this message up a little bit by just saying that it's a content-heavy message. I feel like you can't talk about faith and science with just having a couple points, a couple facts, and so it's content-heavy. And so I hope that you guys take advantage of this. This was definitely the hardest message I've ever had to write, honestly. And so I hope it's going to be good, but. And because it's content heavy, if I look at my notes a lot, I don't apologize, by the way. But while I'm looking at my notes, I hope that you are taking notes because the content is great. And there's a lot of good facts, a lot of good ways to learn how to defend our faith, even when we're talking about the topic of science and faith and can they coexist. And so as Christians, we usually get nervous a little bit when we talk about science. Some people don't, some people do. But I know that a lot of us, I've heard stories too, and of a lot of parents being nervous to send their child to school, send their child to a university because of what they might hear in biology class, in chemistry class, and in philosophy class, right? And it's tough because we all know that the teachers and a lot of the universities today really favor science. They really favor that philosophy, that theory of science being it. And a lot of times we look at science and faith as there's this war between the two. And you either usually have to pick one. You either have to pick faith or you have to pick science. And that's what a lot of people think these days. And so, but this is a very broad topic. We can go on for literally weeks just talking about the topic of faith and science and can they coexist. We can talk about the universe. We could talk about anatomy. We can talk about geology. We can talk about physics and all of these things. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to really make it kind of as simple as possible for us. I'm not going to try to rabbit trail, but I want to make it very simple to explain can faith and science coexist. And so I want to look at three main conflicts right now. And by the way, my point is not to persuade anyone in any way. My point isn't to persuade someone to believe in science with this topic or believe in faith with this topic. But my point here is to come to an overall conclusion, an overall agreement with each other that faith and science can coexist. And so we're going to look at the first conflict right now between faith and science, and it is the Big Bang versus Genesis. And I'm going to read this definition right now of the Big Bang. It's the theory that the universe originated billions of years ago and in rapid expansion from a single point of nearly infinite energy density. And then we have Genesis on the other hand. It's God, an all-powerful, all-knowing, intelligent being that created all things. And so here we have the Big Bang, and then here we have Genesis. And in the 20th century, there was an atheist. His name was Bertrand Russell. And he's a political activist. He was a mathematician. He was a very smart man, but he was very well known as an atheist. He loved to debate against Christians. He wrote a lot of books against faith, backing up science. And one of the main comments that he always had towards Christians and those of the faith is he said, if every single thing has a cause, then God must have a cause as well. And an even more famous atheist that we know of, you guys might have heard of him, Richard Dawkins, he said the same exact thing, very similar. He said, if God created everything, then who created God? Because everything we see has a cause. We can all agree on that, right? Most of it. Everything we see has a cause. I bought this shirt because I bought it from a store, and I bought that from the store because I had money. Every single thing has a cause that we can physically see. And so, but I want to break it down a little bit more, and I want to take three elements right now. We're going to kind of dig into science, and this is going to be really fun. I'm really excited about this. And so we're going to start by, we're going to dig into three elements right now, three main elements that truly make up the universe and what we know today. And so we're going to take three ones. We're going to take space, time, and matter. Space, time, and matter. And what we know is, whether you're an atheist or whether you're a Christian, this is not a debate. Everyone agrees that there is something that causes space, time, and matter. All of these things have a cause. Okay? And so, if there is something that causes space, time, and matter, there must be something greater than space, time, and matter. Can we all agree on that? That there is something greater than space, time, and matter if there's something that causes space, time, and matter. And so we're not going to mention exactly what it is right now. We're not going to say God. We're not going to say the Big Bang. But whatever this thing is, it is greater than space, time, and matter. And it must be powerful. It must be authoritative. And whatever this thing is, it must be matterless, right? It must be spaceless. It must be timeless. And we're going to pick on just one of those right now. We're going to pick on time. And we can all agree that if something is timeless, if it is outside of time. And if it is outside of time, even scientists can agree that it is eternal. And so here we have this thing that is powerful, authoritative. We have something that is spaceless, timeless, matterless, and something that is eternal. And the interesting thing is when we actually start defining this thing, or whatever people want to think it is, it starts to sound a lot like the God of the Bible. And in Genesis 1:1-2, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. And I use this verse because it explains very clearly that God was in the beginning, and it matches up with science perfectly, saying that there was nothing before whatever this thing was, right? And so it's talking about, and even in the Bible, in Genesis right here, it is saying that there was not matter, it was not time, there was not space at this moment of creation, or before it. There was nothing. And so this brings us to the conclusion that if God never began to exist, therefore he does not have a cause. And Thomas Aquinas, he has this name for God. He calls him the uncaused mover. And science and all creation points to the fact that there had to be one thing that did not have a cause. Isn't that interesting? All science actually points to there being one thing that did not have a cause, or else none of this would be here. And there must be an uncaused cause for it all. There must have been an eternal mind to start it all. And Christians and atheists believe that there was a beginning. We believe, obviously, in a creator. We believe that God was the beginning of all things. And they believe in the Big Bang and that was the beginning of all things. But you can't just start with the Big Bang without acknowledging that something had to be in existence prior to the Big Bang in order for that event to be caused. And if atheists don't believe in God, they must believe by faith that before the Big Bang there was some kind of matter, that never had a cause, that never had someone or something that created it. It's kind of interesting thinking about that because they're believing in an eternal matter while atheists are saying that it's wrong for us to believe in an eternal God. But that's the truth. They're believing in an eternal matter that was there always, that started the Big Bang because something always had to be in existence to cause everything. Nothing can start out of nothing. And so they must believe by faith that nothing caused this matter and that it was always there without anything or anyone that created it. And this brings me to the point that Christians and atheists both believe that there was something eternal at the beginning, either an eternal God or an eternal matter. Because if there was ever nothing, then if there was ever nothing in existence, then what would there be today? There'd be absolutely nothing today. But here we are. We're here today, we're standing here, we're sitting in church today. So this basically explains to us that there was nothing in all of history that there was nothing that, I'm sorry, real quick. Well, I kind of lost my point. This is very content heavy, I'm sorry. And so I'm going to start with John 1 through 4. And it says, in the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God, and God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The Word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to everyone. And this shows that the fact that we're here means something. And it's not just the fact that we're here, but it's the fact that we have emotions. It's the fact that we have morals. It's the fact that we have a sense of right and wrong. Because those things cannot come from a singular matter. But those things are attributes of a God that we were made in the image of. And I love this because we don't even have to read scripture to know the existence of God fully. We can literally just look at science, and science will tell us that God is the type of being that had to be in existence for eternal life to create absolutely everything. And so the second main conflict that I want to talk about is evolution versus intelligent design. And evolution, the definition of this is modification from pre-existing species, cumulative inherited change in a population of organisms through time leading to the appearance of new forms. The process by which new species or populations of living things develop from pre-existing forms through successive generations. And the definition of intelligent design, the theory that matter, the various forms of life and the world were created by a designing intelligence with which we obviously as Christians believe that's the God of the Bible. We believe that it was the God of the Bible that was the intelligent designer. And so evolution says that we have evolved from animals, apes and chimps specifically. And Charles Darwin, he started this theory in 1859. He published this theory of evolution. And this was obviously before we had huge breakthroughs in the scientific world with much research and all the technology and everything that we truly have today. And so this is kind of crazy. It was 1953 when scientists discovered the DNA molecule. 1953, that's not that long ago. 1953, scientists discovered the DNA molecule, and this was a groundbreaking discovery because what this explained was that it explained that the basis of all life was information. You see, we all have DNA. Each and every one of us have a DNA molecule in us, and that is what makes us, us. That's what makes you, you. And there was this German researcher who studied information. That was literally his job. He devoted his life to studying information. And his studies brought him to studying the DNA molecule after it was discovered. And what he comes to find is that our DNA is more complex and holds more information than anything known to man. anything, that this little thing we can't even see with the eye, the naked eye, holds more information than anything known to man. Isn't that crazy? Even when we think of our laptops, even when we think of our smart TVs at home, we can all pull out our iPhones right now, and those things hold a lot of information. But the fact that he came to, and researchers back up as well, scientists back up, is that our DNA molecule holds more information than anything known to man. And so I love this. What he did was he actually wanted to compare. He wanted to compare a couple things that proved the amount of information our DNA holds. And so what he did, he was holding a presentation all about information, all about DNA, and he has one slide on the screen. And there's many people in the audience, and he has one slide on the screen. And on this one slide, he prints the entire Bible, front to back, from Genesis to Revelation, on one slide. Could you imagine seeing the entire Bible on that screen right there? You can't. We can't even barely fathom it. And so he starts asking a couple questions. Can you guys make out any sentence? Can you make out any word? Can you even make out a letter in all of that? And they're like, no, of course not. You have the entire Bible printed on one slide. We can't see a thing. He says, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And what he says is, by comparison to that one slide in our DNA is 7.7 million times more density of information of that one slide. Talk about intelligent design. That's insane. And I say million twice. I'm not exaggerating the million that I said before. I literally mean 7.7 million, a whole nother set of zeros. Density of more information than that one slide. This is how much information each DNA that is each and every one of you, including me, holds. That is intelligent design written all over it. But scientists and atheists continue to deny it for some reason. But to me, I don't know about you, but I see the hand of God all over this. And throughout the years, we have compared our DNA to apes and found that the human's DNA molecule is greatly more complex than any ape or any animal, meaning that we hold a great amount more information than anything in the world. And the information that our DNA holds compared to animals proves why we have morals. It proves why we're designers. It proves why we have a sense of right and wrong. It proves why we have deep emotions. More emotions than any animal and any other creation than the human species. That is the difference between our DNA molecule and anything else in the entire world. You see, there's a reason, honestly, I kind of find this funny. There's a reason to why that they actually made a movie about apes like taking over the world. What is that called? Planet of the Apes? It's because it's unbelievable. It doesn't make sense. There's no way that could ever happen. It's humorous in some way, because the DNA molecule in an ape is nothing compared to the DNA molecule that the human species has. And this answers the question of why humans are the most intelligent species on earth and why we were designed to be. Genesis 1:26 through 27 says, "Then God said, 'Let us make human beings in our own image, to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, and all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground.' So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created him." And so we see here that God designed us intentionally, intelligently, to be the top of the food chain. He very intentionally designed us to with the ability to reign over all livestock, over all animals, over everything in this world. And what evolution and the Big Bang tell us is that we're basically supposed to be these robots, kind of walking around with no sense of emotions, no sense of morals, no sense of really anything. But the reason we are intelligent humans with morals, with emotions, and the ability to reign over anything in this entire world is because we were made in the image of a God with all of those attributes. Right? We were made in the image of a God who has morals. He feels emotion. He feels angry at times. He feels jealous at times. He feels joyful at times. He feels deep love all the time. And we feel those things because we were made in the image of a God that has those attributes. And that is something that science can't explain where those come from. The last conflict that I want to go over today is evidence versus miracles. Growing up, I had this friend. I played hockey with him all my life. And his dad ended up being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he literally only had a couple months to live. And so he kind of threw in the towel. He was like, all right, I'm done. I'm just going to enjoy the rest of the time that I have with my family. All treatments were off. Everything was off. And then a couple months go by, and then a few months go by. And so he goes to get a checkup because not only has he not passed away, he is feeling better. He's feeling a lot better. And so he goes to get a checkup, and they're just like, Scott, it's gone. There's nothing there. The body, the cancer that was literally spreading rapidly through your body, killing you, is gone. It's nowhere to be seen. And it's insane because to this day, and I still talk to them, to this day, no doctor, no scientist, no researcher, no one has been able to explain to him why that cancer went away, but not only that, but why it has never come back. It's insane, but these are stories, and a lot of us have heard stories like that, right? A lot of you guys have maybe heard it on TV or the internet or maybe someone close to you or maybe yourself. But we've experienced these miraculous, unexplained things, and with stories like these, Christians believe that God has done something unexplainable. While atheists and scientists and others who need evidence continue to look for a cause, because there has to be a cause if there is an effect. And scientists and Christians both are attracted to these unexplained miraculous phenomena for a couple different reasons. Science is very drawn to these things because it looks for a natural cause, and it's science's curiosity tries to drive them to an answer. Right? And then Christians, what we see is we see an opportunity to reinforce our faith by divine intervention. And here's the thing, is that neither are wrong, they're just different. Neither are wrong, they're just different. And science can actually conflict with our faith due to our faith's lack of evidence. And that's what science has against our faith. And it's what it has kind of against Christianity, is it says there's this lack of evidence, which obviously could not be farther from the truth. You see, one of the greatest pieces of evidence God actually gives us is science. One of the greatest pieces of evidence God gives us is science. And you see, our God is actually a God to back up claims. Our God is a God to show us evidence when it's needed. You guys, it's all throughout Scripture, truly. You guys remember when Moses went up to the mountain and he asked God to show him his glory, and God showed him his glory. And do you remember when Jesus, he resurrected, and he goes to this house with his apostles, and they're all mourning and weeping because Jesus just died, and they don't know what happened. They're lost. And Jesus walks in the door, and he's like, hey, I'm back. And Thomas, we call him Doubting Thomas, because he's like, Jesus, that's not you. If that's really you, then show me evidence. Show me the scars in your hands. And so Jesus walks up to him and shows him the scars in his hands. Says, Thomas, is this enough evidence for you? And we see very clearly all throughout Scripture as well that our God is a God to back up claims. Our God is a God to show evidence. And you know, sometimes we don't understand the miracle. But we can believe that a supernatural, all-powerful God is the cause of it all, even when we don't understand. And that can be the hard thing sometimes about faith, is we don't know some things, and some things are not meant for us to understand. We might not have all the evidence in the world, but with our own faith, we can believe that God is the cause and the miracle is the effect, always. You see, faith isn't just make-believe fairy tales. Faith isn't wishful thinking versus facts. What faith is reasonable trust in something that has solid evidence. Faith is reasonable trust in something that has solid evidence. And what we come to find, kind of wrapping up all of these three conflicts, all of them, we have the Big Bang in Genesis, we have evolution and intelligent design, and we have evidence versus miracles. And what we see very clearly when we wrap all them up after we've discussed them is that what we come to find is that science actually cannot explain everything. But the Bible can explain everything science can't. You see, the biggest conflict science has with faith is we actually have truth found in our scriptures to always back up our faith. And it's not the other way around. Science cannot back up everything. Science cannot explain everything in this world. Have you guys ever thought about what data is truly? Have you ever thought about information? Have you ever thought about the fact of let's say you have this laptop. Let's say this right here. This laptop right here. And for years, I have been putting data and information and files onto this laptop. Why has my laptop weighed the same as the day I bought it? Data doesn't weigh anything. And this is something that science cannot explain. It's something that is kind of just, it is. It's just there, and no one has been able to explain things like this. Have you ever thought about where memories come from? Have you ever thought about where scientists can tell you where memories are stored? It's in the hippocampus part of your brain. But scientists can't explain the origin of memories, where exactly they come from. They can't explain your thoughts and why when you can close your eyes, and if I asked you, close your eyes and think of your spouse, you can close your eyes and still see your spouse. It's something that science cannot explain. It's kind of a supernatural thing when you think about it. It really is. And there's some things that science cannot explain that only God can explain. Only our scripture can explain. And so science can only prove so much, but what it does prove, it actually proves the existence of God if we look at it the right way. You know that science actually came from Christianity? Actually, a lot of things came from Christianity. Universities, schools, hospitals, all came from Christianity. If you don't know that, there you go. But science came out of Christianity because people were trying to research, to prove the existence of God. This is science. Came out of Christianity. Have you thought about some of the most groundbreaking scientists that have ever lived? Let's look at Galileo. He's had some groundbreaking discoveries, and Galileo was a man of faith. He was a great Christian man who loved Jesus with all his heart. But you ever thought about why Christian scientists were so successful? It's because they saw all creation and everything through the lens of God. And so I just want to answer the question one more time. Can faith and science coexist? Yes, they can coexist. And God uses science. I want you guys to write this down, that God uses science to prove his existence, show his power and authority, and bring him glory. You see, when we look at science through the right lens, we see that faith and science go together beautifully. They complement each other. And scientists and atheists have wanted God and faith out of the picture, out of the question for so long that it's kind of sad. They've created this false lens for us to look through in our schools and in our universities and hospitals and many different places, for our kids to look through to where they're supposed to believe that science and faith could never coexist. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. I have a couple applications for you guys right now. I feel like we can talk about facts all day. We can talk about science all day. We can talk about many things all day, but what is information without application? And so I want you guys to write this down, is that we must see all creation through the lens of God. We must see all creation through the lens of God. Romans 1:20. Paul says, "For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God." Isn't that cool? You see, when we look through God's lens, a lot of things change. When we look through God's lens, we see his hand in all creation. We see his hand in everything. It's when we look through the lens of God is when we see our intelligent design. It's when we look at his hand and when we see his hand in all anatomy. It's when we see his hand in the stars, in the sky, in the ocean, in all of the universe. We see God's beautiful creation in it all. But it's only when we look through the right lens, when we look through the lens of God. See, all creation has been intentionally designed to worship him, to know him, and bring him glory. And this is the last fill-in I want you guys to write down, is worship and bring him glory with your life as we are his creation. And church, instead of asking the question, can faith and science coexist? Let's start to ask the question, if all science and creation was created to bring him glory, how can I? How can I?